Hello vegheads, Mike here from Anti-Vegan Nonsense. Today I'm going to discuss the implications of the new Ag-Gag Law, Ontario Provincial Bill 156, Security from Trespass and Protecting Food Safety, and what that means to Canadian vegans and the animals. Let's get into it. Regan Russel was killed on June 19, 2020 by a slaughterhouse truck driver. Charges since then have been laid in her death, with the driver being charged with careless driving causing death, which is a far cry from the murder charge I feel he should have been charged with. Unfortunately, the law was not in the favor of Regan Russel, because that same week, just 2 days before, on June 17, 2020, the Ontario Provincial Conservative Party passed Bill 156, Security from Trespass and Protecting Food Safety Act, which would put Regan Russel on the wrong side of the property line when the truck hit her. Because of this bill, technically, what she was doing, interfering with the transport of animals for processing, which is defined in Bill 156, Section 6, was illegal. That section reads this: Section 6 prohibits persons from interfering with a motor vehicle that is transporting farm animals and from interfering or interacting with the farm animals in the motor vehicle without the prior consent of the driver of the motor vehicle. Section 6, Subsection 1. No person shall stop, hinder, obstruct, or otherwise interfere with the motor vehicle transporting farm animals. Section 6, Subsection 2. No person shall interfere or interact with the farm animal being transported by a motor vehicle without the prior consent of the driver of the motor vehicle. Essentially, this gutted the system. I can't say whether it led to the lesser non-criminal charge of careless driving, but I don't think it helped the case. I'll explain in a bit why it is a non-criminal charge. If you read the charge, careless driving, which is written into Section 130 of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, it states this: Subsection 1. Every person is guilty of the offense of driving carelessly who drives a vehicle or street car on a highway without due care and attention or without reasonable consideration for other persons using the highway. Penalty, Subsection 2. On conviction under Subsection 1, a person is liable to a fine of not less than $400 and not more than $2,000, or to the imprisonment for a term of not more than 6 months, or to both, and in addition, his or her driver's license or permit may be suspended for a period of not more than 2 years. Careless driving causing bodily harm or death. Subsection 3. Every person is guilty of the offense of driving carelessly who drives a vehicle or street car on a highway without due care and attention or without reasonable consideration for other persons using the highway, and who thereby causes bodily harm or death to any person. Penalty, Subsection 4. On conviction under Subsection 3, a person is liable to a fine of not less than $2,000 and not more than $50,000, or to imprisonment for a term of not more than 2 years, or to both. And in addition, his or her driver's license or permit may be suspended for a period of not more than 5 years. Why is it that the term is not more than 2 years? Simple. It's not considered a criminal offense. Why? This is because it's not written into the Criminal Code of Canada. Careless driving is a provincial law within Ontario that is written into and covered under Section 130 of the Highway Traffic Act of Ontario. Criminal offenses and criminal charges are considered federal laws and covered under the Criminal Code of Canada. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. I can only go with what has been released. Apparently, video and eyewitness testimony was used to reconstruct the scene, which has led to the underwhelming, lack thereof, charges that are essentially nothing more than a slap on the wrist. This is the part that is going to get very interesting. The actual Bill 156 itself. However, I'm not going to look at all the sections of the bill, only the ones pertaining to the actual conditions of, definition, and penalties in the bill, especially in how they pertain to the prosecution of other vegan activists, and how it may have led to the prosecution of Regan Russel as a terrorist. The explanatory part reads, "The bill is intended to protect farm animals, the food supply, farmers, and others from risks that are created when trespassers enter places where farm animals are kept or when persons engaged in unauthorized actions with farm animals. The purpose of this act are to prohibit trespassing on farms and other properties on which farm animals are located, and to prohibit other interferences with farm animals in order to, Clause A, eliminate or reduce the risks that are created when individuals trespass on those properties or interfere with farm animals, including the risk of exposing farm animals to disease and stress, as well as the risk of introducing contaminants into the food supply. Clause B, protect farm animals and the food supply chain from the risks described in Clause A. Clause C, protect the safety of farmers, their families, and persons walking in or on farms, animal processing facilities, and prescribed premises, as well as the safety of drivers of motor vehicles transporting farm animals. And Clause D, prevent any adverse effects the risks described in Clause A may have on Ontario's overall economy." But this says nothing about the general risks to the public of increased instances of disease and potential for catastrophic outbreaks that will undermine Clause D of Section 1 of Bill 156, risks to overall economy, which is pandemic potential. They cannot deny the pandemic potential, considering that we're in the midst of one with the, as my kids call it, cough going around at present, or the increased instances of H5N1, H1N1, and H7N1 as a possible outbreak risk to the general public of the surrounding population of these massive factory farms. That would have devastating effects on the economy. Not to mention that keeping animals in such close proximity is a huge risk to the food supply chain as a whole, as is the very act of keeping such large concentrations of animals in close proximity as they do, considering the fecal matter runoff. I could simply just state, Walkerton, Ontario, May 12th through the 24th, 2000, when the township's water supply was contaminated with E. coli due to cattle fecal runoff. I guess because it isn't the food supply, only the water supply. Oh yeah, this incident cost Ontario taxpayers $72 million. Already a chink in the armor that is Bill 156, just wish I knew how it could be exploited. Sadly, I'm no law expert, just someone who knows how to read this kind of code, as I have to follow one, similarly written, for my chosen profession as a Red Seal certified electrician. Let's take a look at Section 2, so it'll make sense when I bring up Section 5, Prohibitions, then finally Section 15, Penalties. Section 2, Definitions. Animal processing facility means a prescribed facility at which animals are processed in a prescribed manner. Prescribed manner meaning brutally murdered against their will. Animal protection zone with respect to a farm, animal processing facility, or prescribed premises means an area on the farm, facility, or premises on which farm animals may be kept or located, and that is A, an enclosure for farm animals, whether or not it is marked as an animal protection zone, B, an area that meets prescribed requirements and is marked as an animal protection zone by the owner or occupier using signs in accordance with the regulations, or C, an area prescribed by the regulations as an animal protection zone for the purposes of this act. Essentially, a concentration camp or kill site. Farm animal means an animal that is raised, bred, or kept on farms and is prescribed by the regulations. Basically a slave that's only right is that they are a slave and their life is at the hands of the highest bidder. Here is Section 5, Prohibitions, re. trespass, etc. Animal farms. 5. Subsection 1. No person shall enter in or on an animal protection zone or on a farm without the prior consent of the owner or occupier of the farm. This subsection is actually covered under trespass laws, but because it has animals, it now has to be extra protected against vegans and other animal rights activists. Processing facilities. Subsection 2. No person shall enter in or on an animal protection zone on an animal processing facility without the prior consent of the owner or occupier of the facility. Again, covered under trespass laws, but extra protection against those angry vegans. No interaction with farm animals. Subsection 4. No person shall interfere or interact with a farm animal in or on an animal protection zone on a farm, animal processing facility, or prescribed premises, or carry out a prescribed activity in or on the animal protection zone without the prior consent of the owner or occupier of the farm, facility, or premises. What this basically also means, as ridiculous as it sounds, is that should I or yourself or anyone else who might be driving down the road and see some farm animals at a fence just off to the side of the road, yeah, it would be a bad idea to stop. If you stop and take pictures or allow your children to interact with those animals, well, you're now breaking the law and can face some absolutely staggering fines. Now this leads me into the penalties section. Penalties. Section 15. Subsection 1. A person who is found guilty of an offense under subsection 14, offenses, subsection 1, is liable on conviction to a fine of, Clause A, for a first offense, not more than $15,000, and Clause B, for any subsequent offense, not more than $25,000. Subsection 2, increased penalties. Subsection 2. If a person is found guilty of an offense as a result of a contravention of subsection 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 7, or subsection 6, 1 or 2, and the court finds that the offense was committed in prescribed circumstances that resulted in an increase to the gravity of the offense, the amount of the penalty may be increased with accordance with the regulations. Now let me remind you of the fines for actually killing a person with careless driving. On conviction, under subsection 3, a person is liable to a fine of not less than $2,000 and not more than $50,000, or to imprisonment for a term of not more than 2 years. So if you just so much as do the compassionate act of giving a pig some water, the poor animal's last sense of compassion before they are brutally murdered and cut into pieces, you can literally be charged and fined more than if you killed someone by careless driving. This is horrible for the animals, as they can now be abused and tortured in plain sight, but should you attempt to intervene because they are in an animal protection zone, you can be charged and face fines up to $15,000 for a first offense. The animal is safe from being rescued, so they can now be abused by their caregiver. Thank you, Ontario. You've made me proud yet again. So now we have a system that is stacked against vegans and other animal rights activists, and we have a husband that has to say goodbye to his wife and will feel the same kind of justice that the animals get. Absolutely none. The saddest part about all this, wild animals, they actually don't even get any real kind of protection. Consider all the food that's grown for all these farm animals. It's taking up more and more of their land, their homes. It's so evident when you look at the rainforest. Honestly, animal agriculture absolutely knows no bounds. They're destroying forests, lakes, rivers, marshes, even our oceans are being destroyed by this industry. Yet here we are, making more rules to help prevent whistleblowers from telling the truth about the system and how devastating it is to everyone and the planet. We honestly have to stop now, before it's too late. Until next time, I am Regan Russel, and I stand against Bill 156 and against all forms of animal exploitation. I am anti-vegan nonsense.